Hello, everyone. Today, Joy and I will be going down Moonlighting Memory Lane with actor, producer, and author Curtis Armstrong. And some of you may not know that his film debut in the movie Risky Business, starring Tom Cruise, got Moonlighting creators Glenn Caron's attention. And Curtis was cast pretty much on the spot after his audition for Herbert Viola, and also known as Mr. Pesto's love interest and trusted associate of David Addison. So thank you, Curtis, for agreeing to answer questions submitted by the members of our Facebook group, Moonlighting 21.
Sure
And
thing.
Joy, thank you. Joy, take it away.
Okay. We were introduced to Herbert Quentin Viola in the episode Yours Very Deadly. That episode was written by Roger Director, and in your book, you credit him for creating the character. Was it very intimidating when you joined an already well-established cast? We know that you and Allyce had great support for each other, but what else did how did you prepare? And how did that first episode go?
Well, it was odd because it was the first television job I ever had. I had done theater for years, and then I'd done feature films, but I'd never done TV. And my feeling was, when I read for it, that it would never happen, because I didn't know the show. I don't know if I'd ever seen an episode before I went on it, maybe one. But I think I was feeling like it was not going to happen because I was told that I was going to be playing the love interest for someone. And I had never really been, played anyone's love interest. And I didn't think that that was sort of going to start now.
Mhm.
So I remember having 3 auditions in a day, which never happened. And 2 of them were for features. I don't remember what the other 2 were exactly. But of the 3 auditions, the one that I thought I would definitely not get was Moonlighting because of the love interest thing. And as it turns out, that was the one I got. So you never know.
Great.
Herbert Viola.
It wasn't terribly intimidating because I didn't know the show. I knew who Cybill was, of course. And I had no idea who Bruce was. And in fact, I was not reading for Viola in that episode. I was reading for a part that had been played by Vince Schiavelli,
Mhm.
who was Alyssa's husband at the
Mhm.
time. And because they didn't have any pages for Viola, they just wanted to hear the actor read. So that was how that all started.
Okay.
Herbert Viola started out a bit different, more of a chauvinist.
Mhm.
But after talking to Glenn, he allowed you to take more creative control of the character. Do you feel that?
Go ahead.
Do you feel that Herbert had evolved into the kind of guy you wanted to portray? Because Herbert was a very amusing character. He was, kind of comic relief in a sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I expected him to be comic relief. I didn't expect him to be a male chauvinist. I felt David kind of had that, Addison had that kind of cornered.
Mhm.
And so I really didn't think that it just felt weird to me. And after a couple of episodes, I did ask Glenn about it, and I said I was feeling a little awkward. It was sort of contrary to who I was as a person to begin with. But aside from that, I just felt like this was not it didn't help to have that, two people in the same, chauvinist boat. It felt sort of overdoing it. And so I asked Glenn about it, and he understood my feelings. And I didn't really have control over anything, but they toned down the chauvinist stuff with him. Um, and that's that to that extent, that's what happened.
Yeah, you came across more sensitive, but at times kind of chauvinistic. I mean, you had a balance of both for the comic sense of it
Right.
anyway.
And part of it, I think, was because he looked up to David so much. Viola did,
Yeah.
that he wanted to be like him. So, it was probably cool for him to be a male chauvinist because David was. Uh, I just felt it was sort of overdoing it. That was my own take.
Yeah, Bert was trying to relate to David in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. In your book, you came to the show when tensions were already flaring between Bruce and Cybill. With Allyce, on the other hand, you seem to share a real friendship outside the show. The chemistry between the two leads, Bert and Agnes' relationship, was a contrast to David and Maddie's. They always seem to make the right choices to progress your relationship with Agnes and Bert, unlike Maddie and David, who just kind of, move further and further apart. Was that done intentionally, you think?
I don't know that I could say that it was done intentionally because I can't speak for them. I mean, I can't speak either for the actors or the writers. I mean, if you read Scott Ryan's book, which is an oral history, which many fans have read, you can follow a little more easily what the progress was with Glenn and Jay and the writers, on basically sort of dealing with the the relationship between Bruce and Cybill, which went up and down. I think as relationships do when you're on a long running show, especially one as high pressure as that one was.
Right.
It's not terribly surprising when there are conflicts, and it wasn't. I don't think it was I wasn't there at the beginning. I heard that things had started off, well, and then had sort of started to deteriorate a bit, and then continued. But there were also times when things were fun and great, and everyone was having a good time. So it's not really a steady uh, devolving of a relationship. It was
Yeah.
just over time that happened.
Yeah, I just think it just showed the contrast between the two main leads who should have had the relationship that you and Agnes had, and it's
Well,
and,
but if they had that relationship, no one would have watched the show.
yeah.
What had people watch the show was the fact that they had that flaring, chemistry going on. I think once I came on the show, as I understand it, they decided that, I was brought on not as a regular uh, actor. The character was not developed at all, and it was not at all certain that I would be on the show regularly. I needed to go through sort of
Trying out period.
it was an audition in more ways than one because they wanted to make sure that I got on well with Cybill and I got on well with Bruce, and that the chemistry, however it turned out between Allyce and me would work. That was all part of the deal. So I had, and I met Bruce and Cybill. I had a scene in that first episode with Bruce and Cybill, and in addition to the main stuff, which was with Allyce,
Mm-hmm.
and it all went well. And so I was picked up. I missed the next episode. I wasn't written into the next one or two, and then, that was while they were doing the deal, and all that, and then it became regular
Right.
after. I think with the clip show, maybe.
Yeah, and then into season 4 for sure.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Joy.
Herbert was one of the absolute highlights of the show, and fans loved, watching your character evolve. Where do you see Herbert today? Did he start his own detective agency? Would he be still married to Agnes?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, that's something that I would never think about, but certainly my recollection is that that it was serious love that Herbert had for Agnes, and that would have continued. I can't imagine anything different for the two of them.
Where was the storyline? What story would you have liked to have seen written for Herbert? What do you think that would have looked like? That wasn't.
If you had to write your own episode, what would have it been about? Did you ever thought about that?
I've never thought about that. I don't look at it really from the perspective of a fan of the show. So it's difficult for me to imagine that. I mean, as it was happening, I was in this episode of a TV show. It was really, except for Cybill, it was just another job. I mean, it was just another job. And in fact, when they started running it on Hulu, I watched a couple of episodes just out of curiosity, and one of them was that first one. I had totally forgotten that I wasn't credited for that episode. My name never appears. And it's ironic because, to the best of my knowledge, I have never done a job in my career where my name was not credited.
So in Yours Very Deadly, that episode that you first...
Deadly.
Yeah.
I am not credited. It never says anywhere Curtis Armstrong. And that's like kind of a big deal for an actor. I'd certainly been credited on everything else that I had ever done. For the life of me, I don't know why I wasn't on that. But it gives you an idea, I think, of how tentative the whole thing was. I really was not expecting it. So as far as the character went, the more stuff came my way and the more scripts I read, I went, oh, this is where they're going. Oh, this is where they're going with him. Oh, I wouldn't have, but I never would have thought, what I would love is if they could do such and such. That would never have occurred to me because I was a second comic relief guy. And, if I was on an episode, that was great. I would never have wanted more than that or expected more than that.
Well, it was as we've heard that the editing took forever and everything was so rushed and everything, so that could explain why your name wasn't credited. Everything was so rushed.
It isn't a rush thing. I can't imagine what the reason was. It was bizarre. But that sort of thing is not overlooked, especially in a case like that where you're actually involved with the primary characters in the show. It just doesn't happen unless you request it. If you say, I'm going to do this episode, but I don't want my name for whatever reason. People do
Hmm.
that, but I would certainly not have.
Okay.
That's an
Huh.
that's a question
Would-
to ask someone next of our next interview.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, it totally makes
Yeah.
no difference, but it was just something that I noticed. You know,
Hmm.
you don't expect your name, you know, in the front of the, you know, in the credits, the opening credits,
Right.
but you do expect it somewhere, and it
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Would you have liked to have seen a spin-off with Bert and Agnes? What do you think the premise would have been?
I don't know. We used to talk about that towards the end. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, Allyce would say, you know, we really need. In fact, they put a line in, I think, in the last episode. It
Yeah.
was one of those fourth wall things where
Yeah.
said, you know, we deserve a spin-off, Herbert and me, something about
Yeah.
that. So you know, we may have talked about it, but I never had any illusions. There would never be such a thing. I mean, we were not stars. I mean, we were actors who were supporting stars,
Hmm.
and that's the way it should have been. I don't know what they would have done with those two characters starring. As it was, when we would do the DePesto episodes, the ratings would tank because as soon as people realized David and Maddie weren't in the episode, they'd turn it off. So there wasn't a lot of hope for that, I think.
Yeah, in the last scene of the episode, the last episode, Agnes says to Maddie and David, "If there's a God, Herbert and I will have a
That's right.
spin-off show."
Yes. That's right.
I knew there was something about that there.
You did a great job in season 4. Do you have any fun memories of episodes where you and Bruce with a Bluemoon dream team?
Uh, you know what? This gets into an area where I don't really. Part of it had to do with because of the way we were filming, especially towards the end. We would sometimes, especially at the end, we would be shooting, you know, multiple episodes at one time, and the only thing I really remember with Bruce was I think it was Blonde on Blonde. It was around that time where we were spending a lot of time in a car. That's basically all I remember. You know, it's 38 years ago or whatever it was.
Mhm.
My memory is not that good, but I remember. I mean, there were a lot of times like the lady is a tramp thing where I
Yeah.
come up. You know, that was fun. You know, say, you know, hey Viola, get dressed in the dark again. It was the line that he said to me as I came out of the cake. Um, um, you know, there were a lot of fun times, and you know, it was a gift as far as being an actor is concerned to have these kinds of scenes with people like that.
Mhm.
So it was a big deal, but you know, I think that area around Sam and Dave, Blonde on Blonde, Cool Hand Dave, that period around there, I seem to remember doing a lot more with Bruce, but I don't really remember.
I remember the scene in Fetal Attraction when you were on the couch and David needed a Lamaze partner and he had you on the
Oh,
couch.
the Mars partner, yeah.
That was a highlight for me. That was a really funny moment. And the Wooly Bully, you doing the opening, the tag for Wooly Bully.
Yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
stuff they threw at you and you rose to the occasion.
Well, that was really amazing. That was the writers' strike
Hmm.
had happened, and we were in the middle of that episode. Not in the middle of it, but they had like 7 minutes
Hmm.
at the end of the episode and nothing. And what I was told was the night before I got a call saying that I should come in the morning. They were sending over a copy of the Sam the Sham and the Pharaoh's
Mm-hmm.
record. And they said, just make sure you know it. Bruce, well, I was told Bruce had an idea. Because technically, Glenn, none of the writers were, supposed to be doing anything. So Bruce supposedly came up with this idea where, they do the Ozzie and Harriet reference, and then
Mm-hmm.
writers are all there with their strike placards,
Mm-hmm.
and Viola does this number out of nowhere, and it's so funny because I have no recollection of what the episode was at all. What I remember is Wooly Bully, and it's probably what most people remember from that episode because it was so out.
Yeah. No,
You were so funny in season 4. So funny.
Yeah.
You know what? What's funny is I appreciate that, but I don't even know what episodes you're talking about. When you say season 4, no idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
unless
Maddie Hayes got married is when you jump out of the cake
Okay.
at the bachelor party.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember you telling us when we interviewed you way back in 2004 that Jay Daniels' wife Vicky showed you the moves.
That's right. She did. She choreographed.
Yeah.
She choreographed.
You were a fast learner? Would you say you were a fast learner?
I had to be. There was no time.
Yeah.
We actually did. For the cake number, Ladies a Tramp. For that, I actually came in. They gave me rehearsal time like the day before with Vicky. So we went in, and Vicky was the one who was teaching me all of the moves and so on. So I had some time with her the day before, and then did it.
Would you say the guys and the actors had a good time with that? I mean, doing that with filming that sequence? Did they enjoy themselves too as much as you did?
Which?
The bachelor party.
The bachelor party. Did you guys have a lot of fun filming that? Was that fun for you and for everyone else?
I don't. I unfortunately no recollection about that part of it at all. My memory is sort of fixed on the number because that was the big scary thing. When I vaguely remember the bachelor party, but not very well.
Okay.
Do you remember being in the airplane with Bruce and take a left for the altar?
Oh, wasn't that? Yeah, vaguely. That was like it took forever. I seem to remember, and Bruce was not happy about it. But the specifics of why I don't remember. Okay. But I know that because I feel like looking back on it, we were there for like 2 days or something, and I think Bruce was it was either what the scene was about or the fact that we were in an airplane for that amount of time. I don't remember, but it was a point of contention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looked like it would take time to film because it looked like the plane was coming down on a local street, and I'm sure it took a lot to coordinate, and so no one would get hurt.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't have been involved in that.
Yeah,
I mean, that would have been a stunt thing they wouldn't have, as I remember it, we would have been on a soundstage.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
In season 5, we see several bloopers of Bruce and Cybill still getting along and having a good time. Apparently, they were not arguing all the time. What episode was being filmed when they had the last argument that seemed to make things even worse? Do you remember?
No, there was no such. My recollection is no such argument. Mm-hmm. It was not like there was a big blow up and everything changed. It was
Yeah.
just a deterioration for various reasons.
Mhm.
Cybill had been away for a long time because she was pregnant with twins. And that, is a big deal. Bruce, had gotten Die Hard. He was taking off and becoming a huge star. He wasn't around all the time. It was just, and those kinds of things in conjunction with a relationship that was sort of tricky anyway,
Mhm.
made things worse. And bear in mind, forgetting about, the personalities, these were two people who were locked together, for whatever the length of time was. For the longest time, it was just the two of them and Allyce. And they couldn't get Allyce into all of the scenes. The reason I was even brought on to the show was to give them a break, because
Mhm.
they needed somebody else to shoot. Allyce was alone, so they had to have somebody come in who could the
Yeah.
two of them could play off of one another
Yeah.
and take some of the heat off of Cybill and Bruce. It was at the time, it was hard to grasp. In retrospect, it makes total sense. They were exhausted, and it had just been going on for
Yeah.
forever. And it wasn't like we shot 9 to 5. We were shooting 14, 16 hours a day. And all of these huge things, the Shakespeare scene, or the black and white episode, the Shakespeare episode, or the black and white, big productions that involved the very complicated stuff, and they were the center of all of it. So it's hard to imagine why they wouldn't have blown up from time to time.
Mhm. No, it's amazing how you all worked under the stress. I mean, we interviewed other people from the show, and I don't know if you remember Julie Janata, but like it seemed like people didn't even get a chance to sleep or go home, or it was just like you lived in your jammies.
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, I remember, because of course pre internet or computer days,
Mhm.
um, I would, on a weekday, get up at 4:30 every day and go outside my house in LA to check and see if there were pages,
Mhm.
because they would be rewritten overnight. The writers never slept. I don't know how they did
Yeah.
it at all. But Glenn would also rewrite everything. So it's what gave the the show the flavor that it did. But
Mhm.
in the meantime, they would, deliver, they had someone on call who would just drive all over LA, dropping off these
Yeah.
pages at your front door in the middle of the night. And you had to be there at 6:37 in the morning.
Mhm.
So what I would do at 4:30 is look and see if there were any changes in what I'd already memorized.
Mhm.
And if there was, I'd have to rememorize it.
Wow.
So it was I remember the biggest one, and no recollection what the episode was, but I do remember one where we shot the master at Bluemoon, and then pages came down for the scene we had just shot. We were coming in for close-ups, and we wound up having to do different lines for the scene that we had just done, which meant they wound up cutting it together somehow. I don't
Mhm.
know, but um, it was pretty crazy.
Did you ever do that trick?
We were not the stars.
Yeah.
They had to go through this in a much bigger way than we did.
Did you ever have to have your lines like shown to you off camera? Remember, like Marlon Brando did when he did The Godfather. He couldn't, they have a placard up, and you would read the lines off camera.
No,
Nope. You have to.
not that no.
Okay.
You had to memorize them.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked on another show or set where it was that, like, waiting for the pages like that and everything?
No.
Wow.
Well,
What episode was being filmed at the time you learned that Moonlighting was being canceled? Do you remember?
I don't even remember actually finding out that Moonlighting was canceled. I don't remember who told me.
mhm.
I mean, it was that at that point, we were certainly shooting 3 episodes at once, the last 3 at one time. So you couldn't, I don't know how, specific. You would think that would be something I would remember the moment I heard. No recollection at all.
Do you remember what the last episode was supposed to be about? The season finale before the show was canceled, abruptly
No, but
canceled?
we wouldn't have known that anyway. We
Yeah.
would have gotten we would have found out when everybody found out. I mean, it's not like anything was planned
Yeah.
ahead of time. We didn't the episodes weren't, blocked so that everybody knew where you were going to be at any given time.
Mhm.
Do you remember what the atmosphere was, how people felt about it when you found out
The
That the
that you
show
were
was
being
canceled?
canceled? Yeah.
well, I guess you can sort of imagine. I mean, it's for me, I guess I felt I'd never had a job that had run that long. Um, so obviously I remember being very sad that it was happening, but I think everybody was in such a state of exhaustion at that point. It would have taken a while to really sink in. Um, uh, but I mean, you are. You just obviously don't want you never want something like that to end, even if it is difficult. When you're an actor, you sometimes, I mean, I got this job, I'd been out of work for almost a year, and when you get something like this and a role like that, um, it's obviously very special and you don't want to see it end. But at the same time, it had become really unpleasant. Um, and so you sort of are not surprised.
Mhm.
So it seemed like Bruce and Cybill were kind of relieved that it was over.
I think so, yeah. I think they were. I think it had done everything. Uh, I mean, Cybill, she was already a star. So, I mean, it gave her career at a critical point an enormous boost. And Bruce was nobody. He was just starting out. He'd done a couple of episodic stuff and some episodes of things, and he'd done some stage in New York, but he wasn't a name. By the time it was over, he was an international superstar. So they had nothing left, to get out of it. It was a different sort of situation with Allyce and me because we had a steady gig, you know.
Mhm.
But for them, they were moving on to whatever they were moving on to. I don't know that it had that big of of an effect on them, other than they needed the break and they were glad to get it. But that's me imagining. I'm not speaking for them.
Mhm.
So Elise was kind of bummed that it ended too.
Oh yeah, well of course, yeah. I mean, especially Allyce because she had been on it from the beginning. She had a lot more of an emotional investment in it than I did. I, was an outsider, and although Allyce and I were close, I remained an outsider really for the rest of it,
Mhm.
for the whole thing. I was somebody who came in at a point when they needed somebody. And fortunately for me and for them, I guess, it worked out. Um, but Allyce had been there, at the launch when it was all, good and the future was bright and all of that kind of thing. And then, it started having issues.
Yeah.
So for her, yeah, huge. And she just had a baby. I mean, Allyce was another one, who, had this huge thing happening in her life. And then, right after that, she finds out it's getting canceled. So she had put in a hell of a lot of work. And when it was all over, of course, yeah, she's going to be sad.
Yeah, when you're an actor, you're always concerned about your next job, if there will be a next job. So when you're a working actor, it doesn't matter how successful you are. Sometimes you just wonder, what's next?
Yeah.
Working again. Yeah. So
It's the old
yeah.
thing. Actors always, your automatic reaction is, well, that was fun. Now I'm done. I'll never get another job. And when it's something that big and that, glossy and, everyone is talking about it and it's, with these two massive stars, when all of that is going on, there are a couple of things involved. What winds up happening on the one hand is you think I'll never work again, but then the other part of it is, well, this was so successful, surely I'll work again. But even with Moonlighting, as huge as it was in the second season, third season, around there, big ratings and all that, it had started to decline anyway. And so part of what you don't want to have happen is to have it happen the way that it did on Moonlighting, where it just a slow crash. And everybody is sort of, audience wise, they're not watching it anymore because for whatever reason. So there were a lot of mixed feelings about that whole last season. Was difficult.
Right.
You went on to work with people from Moonlighting, like Barbara Hall and Joan of Arcadia.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I think that was at the Fox lot that I worked on Joan, I think, of Arcadia. So yeah. And Allyce and I worked together a couple of times. So we've there have been a few people that I've had other jobs with, although not in a long time. But
you worked with Alan Arkish a couple of times, I believe.
And Alan Arkish, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you were on Psych as well. Steve Franks, his father, was a security guard on the set. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
Steve Franks, the creator of Psych. I believe he was a security guard on the set of Moonlighting. And,
I didn't know that. If I did know that, I forgot. Yeah.
And you were on Psych. You were an episode of Psych.
Yeah, just one episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if you look back at seasons 1 and 2, is there an episode that makes you wish Herbert Viola had been hired by Bluemoon sooner? Is there any particular scene that you would have liked to have been in one of the episodes before you started on Moonlighting?
No, because I never watched the show. It would. I didn't really. I'd had people recommend the show, and I maybe watched one or two. I don't really remember. But it was never. Television was a different thing for me. It was not something that I wanted to do necessarily. I just wanted to keep working, whatever it was. But I would never have looked at an early. In fact, I'm pretty sure there are episodes of Moonlighting I've never seen, ever. Because once I was on the show, it was just this, fast train of work, and it wasn't as easy in those days you couldn't just stream it. Once those episodes were done, they were done. And so as far as I was concerned, I came in when I was supposed to come in, and I lasted as long as I could last. But I would never have had that option of without having been a fan of the show, which I wasn't.
What was your favorite day of filming on the set? Do you remember what you guys were up to that day?
There were different things for different reasons, but I mean, the Atomic Shakespeare has got to be up there with among the most fun. It was so weird. I mean, to be in that situation suddenly. I had, at the time, it was still very early for me on the show. And I was scheduled to go back east, I remember, to work, to do Shakespeare at a regional theater that I'd worked at before. And they were inviting me back to do another summer production at this place. And I was sort of hanging on. I wanted to do it, but I didn't know what was happening with Moonlighting because I was still waiting to find out. And one day I was talking to Jay Daniel, and I said, I was just wondering because, I don't know if I'm going to be here, if you need me, but I've been offered the Shakespeare thing. And he said, don't worry about it. You may get to do your Shakespeare. And I went, I'm getting fired, again, that,
Yeah.
and then as it turns out, what he had meant was Shakespeare. So I never did get to go back and do actual Shakespeare. I was doing cod Shakespeare, but it was great fun. I mean, really fun. Those scenes that we were shooting in the Court of Miracles at Universal, it was just magic. I mean, the Court of Miracles for me was like a childhood thing because I was a big fan of the Universal horror films, and that set was I felt like I knew it like the back of my hand. All of the Sherlock Holmes, Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes movies, which I adored, were shot in that location.
Yeah.
And it was one of the only times, the first time in my film career that I felt like I was in Hollywood, filming something in Hollywood. Because Risky Business, Chicago, Revenge of the Nerds, Arizona, Clan of the Cave Bear, Canada, all of these, all of them on, standing, usually on, exteriors or something, but nothing on a major sound stage, even Moonlighting. Usually we were shooting on the Fox lot in a soundstage. So it was sort of Hollywood, but it was not dramatically Hollywood. It was just a big empty place where they had stuck in the Bluemoon office, that kind of thing. But this was Hollywood, This really made me feel excited.
Yeah, but it was a big production with multiple units shooting also. Yeah. Extravaganza.
Yeah, hugely expensive.
Yeah.
It took a long time. I read in the Jay, I guess, in the oral history says it took 11 days. There's a lot of confusion about that episode because people say, well, it cost $1 million, which had never gone towards an episode of a TV show before. But other people say, well, no, it was actually $4 million. And other people say, no, it was $3.5 million. I don't know how many millions of dollars it cost. everyone seems to have a different recollection of it.
Yeah.
But,
You know who would know? Brandon Stoddard would know.
believe
But
me, I'm sure he would have forgotten by this time. But
yeah.
yeah, it was a huge production in all respects.
Yeah.
So I guess that is a roundabout way of saying yes. That's what I.
Yeah.
What was your most memorable moment with Bruce, Cybill, and Allyce?
That gets back to really the same thing where I don't really have specific memories of anybody. I mean, it was so long and so involved and so emotional that it all blends together. It's why I have no real recollections of specific scenes, episodes, seasons. I don't really remember because at the time I might have, but by this time it's been so long. I just have general memories of everybody.
Among all the notable guest stars that appeared on the show, which one was your favorite and why?
Hmm. Wow. Favorite? Um, Geez, I'm not sure that I really have one. One of the things. I mean, I loved Dennis Dugan deeply, um, and we always had enormous fun when he was on the set. Um, but in our roles, Allyce and me, we didn't have a lot of contact with the big guest stars usually. Eva Marie Saint or, Robert Webber, people, Whoopi Goldberg, people like that. They were there, but we didn't necessarily really have a lot to do with them. So I'll just say Dennis because he was a hoot and a lovely guy and a good actor and a great director. So he would get my vote.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite episode? What are your favorite episodes and why?
Well, again, I mean, Atomic Shakespeare, and for another reason, obviously, would be Here's Living with You, Kit. The one that was focused on
Yeah.
Viola. I also loved Blonde on Blonde. I thought that was a great episode. Um, there were a lot of really good ones, but again, it's been years, so I'm not sure I can be more specific. But I'll say those three definitely.
I think in the Cool Hand Dave, you got to sing outside Agnes's window too. You got to sing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Sexual Healing,
Yeah.
and that was another one where I got a late night phone call, and I was supposed to. It was it was like Cheryl. I seem to remember Cheryl Maine doing it, but maybe it wasn't. I don't remember. But I would get these phone calls saying, "Do you know this song or do you know that song?" And there were at least three of them during the course of the run that I wound up doing. And Sexual Healing, they said, I think we recorded that. Did we record that or was that live? I seemed no, we recorded it. And so I was in the recording booth, and I know Sexual Healing, but I know it sung by Marvin Gaye the way it's supposed to be sung. I'm not really a singer per se. And so, but we did a bunch of takes. It took a while. And then Roger, director, I think, and I think it was his episode, but he was certainly there, came in. And so I did a take for Roger, and he said, that was really good, but could you sing it higher? And so I tried singing it higher, and he'd say, it's almost there, but higher. And I said, I can't, I'm singing as high as I can. I don't know how I can. But he wanted, and I finally was sort of shrieking this song at the top of my register. And he went, that's it. And it was so horrible. And so on the night that we were shooting it, I remember we were in some like neighborhood in West LA somewhere, and Allyce is up in the window with her green
It's
stuff.
like avocado or whatever.
Avocado mask.
Yeah, I forget the reason for that. And I was down there singing Sexual Healing for hours, and they played it loud. And this, I seem to remember like the key grip was almost crying because he thought if he heard this horrible song sung one more time, he would shoot himself. It took forever and it sounded horrible, but it was funny.
Okay.
Oh, you sounded great. You did.
Thank you for saying that. That's very nice.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be taking over the rest of the questions. So what would you say? What was the most fun scene for you to act?
The most
The most fun scene for you that you had that you acted in film?
Scene?
Yeah. Yeah. Is there one scene that you could say this is a lot of fun?
I'll say again, here's Living with You, Kid, because they had done this set of Rick's Cafe Americain from Casablanca, which was among my top 5 favorite films of all time. I was a huge Bogart fan when I was growing up. So for me, this was a dream on top of a dream. Not only had they done an episode that was focused on Viola, but it was Viola doing Bogart. I used to do an imitation of Bogart in high school for the amusement of my friends. I did Bogart once in a drama class in high school. Somebody was doing a scene from Play It Again, Sam, the Woody Allen play, and I was playing Bogart in that. That was my world. And here I was, not just doing Bogart, but doing Bogart in a perfect recreation of Rick's Cafe Americain. It could not possibly get better than that.
Well, you had the DP Jerry Finneman filming it, and I believe his dad was involved in the filming.
Yes, his dad was a cameraman,
Jerry Finneman, I think, and not Jerry Perry Finneman, but his father was Jerry Finneman.
Yeah. His father, I think, was a camera operator on Casablanca. Yeah.
That was very cool.
Yeah, it was great because Jerry and I talked old movies all the time because he was a huge old movie buff. So once we got to know each other, that was a great connection.
And he films Moonlighting like an old movie. I mean, the style too.
Yeah, silent movie too. The silent movie part.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's really old, but yeah, I was thinking more, sort of, golden age Hollywood 40s, 30s, that period. But yeah, I mean the silent film part too. I mean, it's quite amazing.
Okay. And now, and conversely, which moment was the hardest for you to get through the film?
I remember, I think it was it the one where Allyce and I are breaking up? I don't remember which episode that was.
Because of McGillicuddy? It had to do with McGillicuddy, I think. You were jealous?
Yeah, it probably was, because Viola was always jealous of McGillicuddy. Um, it probably was. But I know that Allyce and I both, it was that period where where we had both gone through divorces, and there was all the stress and that kind of thing, and so there was just a lot of tension, and we had to get through this scene, and it was just really hard for both of us to get through it. But I only remember the emotion of it. I don't remember what the episode was, obviously.
Okay.
But yeah, that would have been it, whatever it was.
Okay. So it was outside, external. It was something external that made it difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say there was anything in that springs to mind that.
Okay. Now speaking. Okay. Well, speaking of McGillicuddy, everyone loved the dynamic and the rivalry between you two. So tell us what it was like working with Jack Blessing, who played him.
I loved Jack, and we played that to death. I mean, we played it constantly. It's the one relationship that from that show that if you didn't know us, you would think that we really hated each other, because we would always play the Viola McGillicuddy, or as Jack would say, the McGillicuddy Viola thing when we were off camera, just for the hell of it. He was so funny and such a good actor, and boy, do I love him as Paul Henry in Here's Living with You, Kid. He does that perfectly. And yeah, great guy, much missed.
So yes, and you had did you socialize off screen? Did you off no, or you pretty
Not
much?
really. I mean, towards the end, I think I talked about that in my book a little. That what I would do is I would stock my trailer on the lot with booze, and on Friday nights, or more likely like early Saturday mornings, whoever was left would show up at my trailer, and we'd have a late night drink up and grouse about what was going on. And so that was for the most part, you have to realize we didn't have time to socialize off camera, off of the lot. Our days were so filled, and then we would leave, and nothing would drag us back, until we were needed. So I didn't really socialize that much with anybody at the time.
John Ames, we spoke.
Oh yeah,
back.
yeah.
By the way, did you? Well, it was John Ames, and he told us, he played Jurgensen on the show, and he told us in an interview that you and Dan Fitzpatrick, who played O'Neill, and Jamie Taylor, would go to Disneyland.
Yeah, all the time.
I guess when you had the time, right?
Well, yeah, we would go on, usually, I guess, on breaks when there were any. We would go to Disneyland. And it was, I had never known Disneyland. I came from back east. I'd never visited Disneyland. And we used to go there and spend a day there. And just, it was a wonderful way of sort of letting everything go. A lot of fun. I've got pictures of all of us there, and Carrie Aaron as well. She used to go, and we would all just go to Disneyland. I mean, why not?
Did all of you get recognized? I mean, you were recognized. John told us.
I was recognized, yeah, but it was, I was already, that was already happening because of nerds and all that But I do remember that first day, the very first day, when I first met Allyce, and she had demanded 45 minutes for the two of us to talk in her trailer, because the first scene we were going to be doing was, rolling around passionately kissing on a desk. And she said to the director, I want to talk to him before we start rolling around on the desk. So she was talking, we were talking, and she said, well, this is going to change everything for you if you wind up on this show, because it's going to be big. And I said, well, I've done some movies before, you get that. And she said, no, you don't. You don't know what it means. And she was the first person who said, or made me realize, this is where people are watching you in their underwear. They're lying in bed. They're sitting on the toilet with it on in the other room. There is a personal connection that people had with movie people as opposed to the relationship they have with TV people. TV was more intimate. It was just different. And I couldn't imagine what that meant until Moonlighting. And then, at the time, it was a big deal because, it was still running regularly. But then by the end of it, of course, I was being recognized for Moonlighting, only to have people say, when is there going to be a new episode? And what happened to your show? Why does it suck now?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, social media has only increased that, where people feel like they know you, and and
that's the next
immediate interaction.
Yeah, that's the logical extension of what television was in those days.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
What do you think Moonlighting would have been like if it was out as a streaming show now with the social media?
It wouldn't have. Well, I mean, it would have been. It's hard to imagine even thinking about that. I mean, we were lucky if we did 16 shows a season. Everyone else was doing 22. And so there was obviously social media would have been a nightmare, at least as far as the actors were concerned. But it would have been, as far as streaming goes, I mean, you could say that about anything, I guess. It would be whatever it would be.
Yeah. With streaming, I mean, it would run more as a limited series, like a lot of shows do now. You wouldn't have to, do 22 episodes.
Right. Yeah, but the thing about that would be great. But the thing is, that system is so weird. Anyway, I mean, the limited thing that they do now is terrible for actors anyway. But in those days, the idea was you don't do a limited series. You do a series with as many as you can get.
Right.
And there was a certain limited number of basic number of episodes, which we never made.
Now, what are some of the craziest stories you can tell us that exemplify the moonlighting mania that swept the country?
You know what? I wasn't really aware of that. I mean, apart from being recognized more, the moonlighting mania was not something that I was a part of. I don't really recall it. I just remember that, every week it would be, well, did you see the numbers for last week? It was, I guess it was big, but I'm not sure it was big as everybody thinks it was. Because even when we were doing at our very best, the numbers were not the kind of numbers that you would expect. I mean, the fans, like fans of anything, were always passionate about it and remain so. But it's not like, I mean, I look at, from my own personal experience, if I look at Moonlighting and Supernatural, the difference between those two shows is dramatic, because Supernatural has, massive worldwide following of people. Moonlighting was never that. It was just a different animal altogether. It's hard to compare.
Yeah, well, I've said before, but back then was only 3 television networks. Everybody watched the show at
Right.
the same time, and then you had the talk after on at work or on the radio, and then you were on the tabloids with some of the craziest stories, just to because Moonlight sold to tabloids, even having
Oh yeah, yeah.
clothing.
I mean the tabloids, I guess, but I mean you're asking about what I remember. I don't
Mhm.
remember that. I mean,
Okay.
the only time I remember I was that when National Enquirer or Weekly World News or one of them um, posted this headline front page thing about Allyce and me,
Hmm.
that we were having an affair, um, and they quoted all of our close friends.
Yes. Hmm.
It was so ridiculous, but
Yes.
it was, I think they had just gotten tired of posting Bruce and Cybill hate each other headlines, so they just,
Right.
for a change, did Allyce and Curtis love each other.
Hmm.
It didn't sell as many copies, obviously.
Yeah. It wasn't as scandalous, maybe, too. Anyway, we touched upon this, but have you been watching it on Hulu? And what do you think about it? Looking back on it.
You know what? I haven't been. I like I say, I watched 2. I watched Yours Very Deadly um, and Atomic Shakespeare.
Mhm.
Um, but I've never been one to watch my own work,
Mhm.
so um, I just it's not anything big. It's just
Mhm.
I have a limited amount of time for TV watching. I'm not going to spend it watching me.
Mm. Yeah, I know some actors. To them it's just work, and it's just they move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
mean, there's work and there's work.
yeah.
Obviously, it was a spectacular job, a great
Mhm.
job. I loved it. It did a lot for me.
Mhm.
Um, massively important experience,
Mhm.
but it was also, 38 years ago,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't watch it now.
Do you have new fans coming to you or recognizing you from the show that didn't watch it back then? Now that it's on Hulu, do you have people coming up to you about it, or talking to you about it?
Not very many. It's
Mhm.
surprising, because I still do cons occasionally,
Mhm.
and it still tends to be moonlighting is a different thing. It's the people that when I interact,
Mhm.
what I'm finding is moonlighting went so long not being seen
Yeah.
that there are huge, there's a couple generations that don't even know what it is,
Mhm.
and so I don't get that kind of a reaction from people.
Mhm.
um I'm sure they're out there, but
Mhm.
it's not something that I encounter.
Now, you wrote a book, Revenge of the Nerd, and one of the members are saying that they loved it. They listened to your audiobook, but they can't seem to find it to order it. So what's going on with the book?
Well, the book's been out for years,
Mhm.
but it's currently not in. It's not pub. It's not. It's not in
Was not
publication now. It was St. Martin's Press had put it out, and Thomas
Mhm.
Dunn Books, but the rights have reverted to me,
Oh,
and am in the process of sort of figuring out what to do with it next. Uh,
okay.
I don't really know.
Okay. And now you touched upon Comic Con. Are there any upcoming projects or public appearances where fans can meet you? Anything coming up that you would like to talk about, share with us?
Not at the moment. No, I'm still doing some of them. I've got a couple coming up over the next. This year is the 40th anniversary of Revenge of the Nerds,
Mm-hmm.
And so there are a number of, like, the Days of the Dead cons, which happen in various places around the country.
Mm-hmm.
They're reuniting the cast for that and for some screenings and so on and so forth. But that's down the road a piece. Yeah, they're still out there.
Okay, well, we'll be watching and you let us know because Cybill had a Chiller Theater event in April, and some people from our group actually went to see her. So you let us know when you're doing a public appearance. Well,
Yeah.
we'll be looking forward to, but that would be great. We'd love to publicize it.
I will let you know.
Yeah. And last question, what would be your dream role? So let's put it out there in the universe to make it happen. Is there any role that you would like to play or?
Okay. Falstaff, Henry IV, Part 1. That would be the dream.
Okay. Very cool. All right, we'll put it out there.
Okay, you do that.
Woohoo, it's out there. Well, thank you, Curtis.
Can I ask one more question? Besides
sure.
Moonlighting, what do you think is your favorite role in your career, Curtis?
God, I don't. That's very hard to say. But Metatron is way up there. That was the role from Supernatural. But there's it's hard for me to say, really. Don't really know.
Well, you definitely had a few memorable ones. I mean,
oh yeah, I mean, but you're asking about favorite ones, which is, I know there are obviously Booger, and there's a bunch of different ones, but I would say in general, just for having lots to do and working with great scripts and all that, aside from Moonlighting, I would say certainly Supernatural.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, and those are all the questions we have.
Okay, we did it.
Yep, thank you. And we'll let you know when we put it up, and we thank you on behalf of the Moonlighting 21 Facebook group.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Bye.